Welcome to lesson 14, where we're going to talk about conversion rates. So sales is one of the most important components of your business. As you may have seen so far, it's not the only component, and we need to improve all of the steps along the way. So your sales conversion rate is improving the process or the sales that we've already got coming towards us. Now, a conversion is after you've had that conversation and the client says, yes, I'm interested in this, is when you actually get them to pull out their wallet and make the transaction. So if you're at a coffee shop and someone walks up and goes, how much is the coffee? And you say, it's $5. That person goes, too expensive, and walks off. The next person comes along and you say $5 and they're like, okay, there's your conversion rate. So you've got a 50% conversion rate out of those two customers. Now, I would assume that most people that walk up for coffee are already decided to go and buy it, but they might also make different decisions like, are they going to get food? Are they going to get this? Are they going to get that? Now, that's a different conversation, but in this lesson, we're just going to talk about the conversion rate, the initial conversion rate, buy or not buy. Now, buying is an emotive state. People have decided they've got a problem and they want to solve it. Now, sometimes people can drift in and out of that emotive state. It might be that they're hot in the moment and they're ready to buy, but an hour later and they're just not interested, or they've got other priorities, or they've changed their mind. One classic example of this is online shopping. Quite often people will add things to cart and then go, you know what, rather than just buy it all, I'm just going to wait. And so they make that decision process, and then they come back and they might delete a few things or delete all of it. So one way to help conversion rates is to provide a follow-up and a reminder, and maybe have a chat with them and say, which of these products did you have questions on? Was there any problems in this? And that helps lead them into the decision to go, yes, I will buy. And that dramatically increases conversion rate. So a cart abandonment email will solve 83% of cart abandonment. So by not having an email, your conversion rate is significantly worse off. So you need to work on those little things that help convert your buyer from someone who's interested in buying to someone who's actually bought. Now, further exploring the idea that sales is an emotive state, you get what's called buyer's remorse as well, where sometimes someone will buy something and then, an hour later feel as though, have I made the right decision? So part of conversion is also making sure that that buyer's remorse doesn't set in, or you reduce it as much as you can. So as soon as someone buys, you thank the customer. Thank you for making that. That's a great idea. You're going to be so happy with this. And let me know if you've got any questions along the way. I'm more than happy to help. And that helps solidify the fact that they made a positive decision and will reduce the risk that they come back and ask for a refund. Now, when talking about conversion rates, we could be talking either online or offline. Obviously, if you're doing online, you're mostly looking at the colors of buttons, the text is easy to read, the selling proposition is good, the product photos are great, the process is easy to follow. But then in the offline mode, you're talking more about soft skills. Is it maybe the rate of contact? How fast did you answer the phone? How good is the salesperson at describing? How friendly they are? How well dressed are they? These are the things that help to improve your conversion rates. Now, remembering that people are not looking to buy based on features. Yes, some people are logical, but most buying is emotive, and so you need to sell the benefits and not the features. So the benefit is the problem that in your life that it's going to solve, as opposed to it having a 10 megapixel camera or a long battery life or something like that. Maybe long battery life could be a benefit because you say you can go all day without having to recharge this thing, whereas a feature might be it has a 500 milliamp battery power or something like that. So the feature is it lasts 13 hours. The benefit is that it will last you your entire holiday, or that it'll last you your entire work day, or whatever the way of describing what is effectively the same thing. So the benefit versus the feature. Now remember, as the salesperson, you are there to solve problems and basically ask them and help them to decide and make the decision. And you do that by asking questions, not by talking. And quite often silence can be a very powerful thing. So maybe ask them, how long have you had this problem for? How important is it for you to solve? On a scale of 1 to 10, how urgently do you want to solve that problem? Or how much would this improve your life? So these sorts of questions get them to think a little bit more about it, and just say, are you ready to make the decision? And then be quiet. Or what would you like to do next? And then sometimes when you get to a certain logical point in the conversation, the only answer is just to go ahead and buy it. But by asking, what would you like to do next? You haven't said, buy now and get a free set of steak knives, and then come off as really cheesy. Or you haven't said, or you haven't tried some of these mind tricks that sales people tend to tell you, closing methods that seem a little bit silly. I heard one that was something like you use some phonetic ambiguity and you say, buy now, you must be ready to look at the contract. I don't believe in any of those sort of mind tricks. I think the real thing comes down from helping someone create a logical choice. You don't want to trick someone into a sale. You don't want to railroad them into saying yes and then signing off, because then they're only going to be frustrated later, and then it's going to come back negatively in the reviews. So you want to make sure that that person is happy, they're willing to solve that problem, and they're in agreement that this is going to solve their problem. You just need to help them arrive at that decision a little bit faster and reduce any risks or barriers or fears that they have in the lead up to that. There are certain questions, however, that can help to reduce buyer objection. So in the first instance, you want to get all of those questions out of the way as soon as possible. You can do that by having FAQs on your website. You can do it by having flyers with information to say, most of our customers experience this. Have it a little bit more experiential. But sometimes when they say, I need to discuss the price with my significant other, or I need to have a think about it. Sometimes you might say, well, if price wasn't a thing, if the price was okay, what else would be your objection? Because sometimes it's not that it's too expensive, or maybe the price is high, but it's worthwhile. Maybe you need to come at it another way and say, what else is it that's holding you back? If it wasn't the money, what is it? Because there's something they're not telling you. And it's your job to go and find out how to solve that problem, reduce that fear, get rid of that risk for them, so they're comfortable in making the sales decision. Now, as far as closing techniques go, there are some, and you can go and research, there's a hell of a lot more materials out there on this, but there are things like the presumptive close. So sometimes you just need to ask for the sale, but you can do it in a less cheesy way. So you can kind of say, hey, are you ready for me to ring this up on the till? Or you might use some other technique like, and you wanted that in, this color, right? And you're not asking them questions necessarily for no reason. You're going to say cash or credit, or you're going to say, would you like a bag with that? We've also got these other things over here. It's kind of presuming that they've already said and made the decision yes, and they will correct you otherwise. But sometimes you do need to ask for the sale. Now, there are other cheesy ways, like in car sales places, you've got the calculator close, right? They take you into a room and then they sit there punching out on the calculator and they go, yes, punching away. And then they say finally, all right, we can do it for this price. And then you say, oh, can you do it any cheaper? And then they're sitting there and they're and they're taking their time, and they might come down a little bit. But the calculator close is just to create time and space for you to go, oh, well, maybe we're already at the limit or something like that. So quite often, if the calculator close is being deployed, you can just say this price or I walk, see you later, and then literally get up and walk out. And by the time you're in the car and driving away, they'll probably chase you down the road to stop you. So there's two sides to the negotiation. You got to remember that the buyer is trying to get value and the seller is trying to retain value. So you need to try and figure out the conversation, understand the buying mode of the buyer, and figure out what it's going to work for them to make a mutually agreeable position. So if you don't have a product that people negotiate on, then that's irrelevant for you. But it's helpful to understand the closing techniques and how there is a little bit of buyer psychology, there is a little bit of manipulation. There are a few snake oil salesmen that tell you all these tricks. Most of them are rubbish. But if you understand that genuine human relationships should win, both parties should agree, and no one should really be tricked or forced or cajoled into a buying position, because it's not going to work well for the brand long term. So sales teams need to be motivated in a way that helps generate a good outcome for all, and not just an outcome at all costs. Now, if you're going to create a sales process to help move this along, you need to make sure that it is simple and easy enough to follow or remember. There's no point creating a 2,000 point checklist of things to do, because no one's going to remember it in the heat of the moment. They're also not going to pull out their little checklist and go tick, tick, tick as they're going through that. But if you can have a few high-level questions or a few processes, maybe 10 to 20 questions that you have saved in your head, ready to go for when your customer is in front of you, then that's going to help improve the conversion rate, because you're going to elicit the information in the right way. And remember to use open questions. who, what, where, how, when, rather than closed questions like, is it true that you did this? Or is it true that you are after that, which is a yes or no? You can use both, and I highly recommend that you delve further into effective questioning, but open questions help elicit information. Closed questions help confirm assumptions. So you should be asking more open questions than closed questions, but sometimes it can be useful to use a closed question to make sure you focus in on that point. So, would you be better off with this product? Yes or no? Yes. Well, that's obvious. Okay, maybe we should go ahead and make that purchase for you. Maybe we should complete the sale. Now, we talked a little bit about objection handling. Now, I would recommend that you go and research the products that you're selling and over time build a list of common objections and then start to figure out some counters to that. For example, it's too expensive. Well, have you seen any other products on the market that can demonstrate that this is the more expensive option? And maybe they're not being measured correctly. Maybe the other product is inferior. Maybe the other product is on sale, which then means it is more expensive, but temporarily so, and that's not a usual pattern of behavior in the marketplace. Another thing that might be that, well, most people that have bought our product only had to do it once, whereas people who bought the cheaper product had to do it 2 or 3 times to get it right. So actually it's more value. So remember, you're trying to sell the value, not the cost. So that's one objection that you could handle. Another one might be, I can't afford it. Well, how about we put you on a payment plan? Or have you thought about getting finance? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? So it's just a way to break down those barriers and remove those objections. You might have to fight an objection around the size of the thing or some color problem or something like that. So maybe if there's only a couple of color options and they wanted this other option, and maybe just say, well, do you have an animal? Do you have a cat? Is there fur that's going to get on this thing? Well, it's going to hide better if it's this color as opposed to that color. You help them come up with some logic or some reasoning to make it okay that that product is right for them. Now, again, don't go down the I'm going to trick you path, but sometimes they just need a little bit of that reasoning. Well, yes, you wanted the pure white tile, but it's going to show up everything on the floor. But if you get this one that's slightly off-white, well, a couple of spills of coffee or a bit of hair on there, it's not really going to show up instantly. Another thing you should do with your sales teams is role play, because although you've got these things perhaps written down, they really need to absorb them, and they need to absorb them into their mind subconsciously. So that means that they need to kind of have it ready to recall in the moment. They're not going to go and say, excuse me, Mr. Customer, let me go and refer to the objection list and my predetermined responses. What they need to do is kind of go through with other sales teams, maybe the sales manager, and play out these scenarios, pretend to be the customer, pretend to have different problems at different times, throw curveballs, and just see what you would say, what that person would say, and then give coaching and feedback, because that then improves the likelihood. And all we're doing here, there's no magic bullet, there's no perfect sentence. You just need to have an overall average improvement. It could be a 1% increase, could be a 2% increase, but an effective salesperson is 2 or 3 times better than an ineffective salesperson. So the return on investment for making sure your sales teams know what they're doing is significant, and it is absolutely worth the investment. One way to make sure you improve your conversion rates, or rather have more effective sales conversations, is to qualify your customer. And I would be trying to do that really early on. You want to create a progressive list of gated questions to say, how big is your company? All right, well, we've got 3 employees. Well, if I'm selling a solution that is for minimum of 20, already I can tell that they're not the right person for me. So rather than spending another 2 hours trying to negotiate with this person to get to the end and then find out it's not right for them, I can find that out very early on. So you need to structure a progressive escalation of questions so that you can get to a position where you decide, is this person worth continuing with? Are my products and services relevant for them? And are they going to get benefit from them? You need to establish 4 key things. That is, do they have the budget? Do they have the authority to make the decision? Do they actually have a need? And do they have a timeline? Because if they could buy this thing anytime, they're probably not going to buy it anytime. So you need to make sure that that person has authority to make the decision and that they need it within a certain time frame. Otherwise, it's just not going to turn into anything. So you can downgrade that lead and prioritize others that are more active, interested, and engaged. Remember that in the sales process, you need to qualify quickly and move them along as fast as possible so that you can go and do the next one and the next one. That'll increase your conversion rates because you can process a higher number of leads and make sure you get to the point. So that means that you need to maybe start the call with an agenda, get to the point quickly, qualify them out as fast as possible. And if perhaps you're on a call, you can qualify them out within the first 5 minutes. Now you don't need to spend the other 25 minutes figuring out whether or not they're going to buy from you. But also when you get to the end of that call and you tell them the price, that they don't get shocked. So it's much easier to make sure that someone is qualified early on, and then you set an agenda for the call so they don't go wandering off track and talking about 100 other things, and then get to the end of the call and go, right, so we've addressed this, and this. Did you have any other questions before we proceed? Yes, no, okay, great. Now here is the price. Now, are you ready to go and make that decision? Yes, no. But having a process helps you to scale it. It helps you delegate it through to your sales teams. It also means that it's repeatable and can be tested, measured, and tweaked. So rather than making dramatic changes every time, you should set a process and then change one small thing each time, and then see what the statistics come back to tell you we increased our conversion or we decreased our conversion. It might mean that you change the structure of the meeting. It might mean that you present different types of information. But by having a process, it makes it very clear that this process works. Now we can do it again and again and again and again. Now remember that what gets measured gets managed. So you should be looking at your conversion rates and understand the percentage of close for each sale. Then and only then can you proactively move towards improving that number. So that's the end of this lesson, and watch out for the next one.